And second is, how do we do things in a way that's just unapologetically who we are, right?
Yeah.
We're not trying to create this mass-produced beer or anything like that. We want to make Indian flavors, Indian beers, and people should see themselves in our beer because the name is Indian, the label, which my wife actually designs, they're Indian. The description is Indian. Like, that's our niche. We're really proud of it, and we try to lean into that. So,
I Am Consciously Curious, a podcast for those that are searching for meaning and fulfillment in their lives. My name is Victor Chan, and I'm on a mission to find out why people do what they do. I've interviewed white-collar to blue-collar, entrepreneurs to passion projects, and life is just too short to not produce meaningful work. Thanks for tuning in. We are live. Hello, everyone. We have Bhavik Modi.
Hi. Nice to be here.
Hi. Good to meet you.
Absolutely.
As far as my relation to your beer, I was first introduced. I had a beer phase. I am unfortunately out of that beer phase. Transition. I don't even drink that much these days, but it's maybe more wine, maybe 2 times a week type thing with dinner. But I would wait in line for beer. I would stay up on all like the Untapped apps and reserve beer and stuff like that. So I would make a weekly trip to Beer on the Wall.
Wow.
It was a good phase, a good era of my life. So stoked when Hop Butcher got a home. Like, it was all that stuff. And I want to say the very first time I saw your cans on the shelves was, are you at Konbini and Kampai?
We are, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
They've been great.
Junjun. And then, but most recently, which is why I reached out, was during dinner at that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know, it's not an era, but the episode I published today was Chef Zubair, Mohajir. And I love this, not necessarily a renaissance, but like what how do you say it? What you guys are doing for the Indian community. From him essentially showcasing Southern Indian food. Yeah. And then with you guys importing spices from India and truly making every beer kind of an homage to something about India.
Yeah. And Zubair's great. Zubair and we collaborated on a beer dinner 2 years ago at the back of Wazwan in the Coach House area.
Oh my goodness.
And invited, it was like 25, 30 people. Zubair kind of designed a meal, and each segment of the meal had a different beer that paired with it. So he's been a great friend to us. We have our beers at Wazwan as well.
Yeah.
And the folks that you mentioned, Konbini and Konpai, trying to support a small business that's Asian owned like ours. Yeah. Tatu, they've been partners with us before they even opened their restaurant. We did a collaboration beer with them as well. Everything about us is really intensely local, and trying to showcase our culture, highlight other cultures, but also create this community in Chicago that really celebrates all sorts of cultures as well.
I love to hear that, and especially because you're not born in Chicago.
I'm not. No, I was born in India.
Yeah. Born in India. And then where were you, when you migrated, where did you land?
Like many immigrants, we kind of followed where the work was with my family. And so we started in Silicon Valley. I grew up right behind Apple's headquarters in elementary school. My dad worked in tech. And then the big kind of tech bubble crashed in the late 90s or so. So then we moved to Ohio. And then I spent, high school, college, et cetera, in Ohio. And then moved to Chicago for my first job after that. And plan was always, I'm going to go back to Ohio. That's where my friends are. That's where my family is. But then I met my wife here, and she is born and brought up in the suburbs of Chicago. And so I say work brought me to Chicago. Love kind of kept me here. So
I love that.
Stay a long time.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
So when you left Silicon Valley, did your dad leave tech altogether?
No, he stayed in tech, but the job market kind of dried up at that point in time. So he, But
he found something in Ohio.
He found something in Ohio, in Cincinnati.
So random.
Yeah. Exactly.
Was he looking all over the country?
Yeah, we looked at Milwaukee. He was trying to stay in the Silicon Valley as much as possible, but for those, in the Bay Area, the housing prices are really high.
Yeah.
And so at that point in time, we had to, I remember, like, you could kind of, you're young as a kid, so your parents don't really show you their struggles, but you could tell you're kind of struggling, right? Like we had to switch apartments that were away from where my friends lived. I was like, oh, why are we in this kind of community that's not as nice as where we live? And then eventually, I think it just got to a point where we had to kind of follow where the work was and make the move. So those are a big transition. You go from a very diverse community and to a place that it's just different in Cincinnati. And so,
still Midwest vibes?
Still Midwest vibes.
Okay.
And honestly, a great place.
I don't think I've been. I might have driven through, but never kind of stayed.
It's kind of a Catholic, like, parochial town.
Okay.
Very, you ask someone from Cincinnati where you're from, they'll tell you their high school, right? And from their high school, you kind of know everything about them.
Okay.
And so it's a deeply community feel. Everyone's really connected. Everyone's really friendly. And I came to fall in love with it.
So when you guys moved there, were you starting high school, like 14, 15?
Younger. I was probably, sixth grade or so.
Okay.
When I made the move.
It
was hard. I'd say first 2 years was hard.
Of course.
Just making friends, not being kind of accustomed to that environment.
Sure.
But then, I think those challenges are kind of what shape you, right? And I've become much better at making friends, leaning into discomfort from those experiences.
And if you would reflect, like, were those moments an opportunity to think about your interests and your joys and further that?
I think so. I think, I haven't really thought about this before, but one of the things that I had in California where I grew up was a really deep connection to the Indian community. There's such a big population of immigrants there that came from India and other places that I was always surrounded by Indian food and culture and religion and all of that. And suddenly when I moved to Ohio, that was kind of stripped away. And so I felt this kind of longing to reconnect.
Okay.
And I think, 20, 30 years later, that longing has still existed to where I'm kind of a nerd for Indian history. I really want to learn about the cuisine. I love to cook. All those things, and I think it comes from wanting to feel a deeper sense of connection to where I was born.
That it's so interesting that you say that, because it's not something that people realize until later in their life, maybe like late 20s, mid 30s. Was that something that your parents modeled? Like, were they tight-knit with their community, and was that something that they sought after the move as well? Yeah,
it's funny you say you don't realize it until later. There's if you've ever seen Steve Jobs' commencement speech at Stanford, I think it was like 2007 or so.
Seen it once, yeah.
He said, you can't ever connect the dots in life looking forward. You can only connect them looking back, right? To see kind of how you've gotten to where you've gotten to. And it's something that, as I look back, it's something my parents really modeled, right? At home, we speak our native language of Gujarati. We're eating, our local cuisine. We're involved in our local temple and kind of study groups and all that. So I think it was very formative in that way.
Yeah. But I wonder if your dad ever thought about that and included it in the list of priorities upon making that move, or if it was more simpler than. Oh, okay.
I bet. Yeah. I think the moment we kind of landed in Cincinnati, we tried to. You're kind of keeping your feet in two places at once, right? On one side, you're trying to integrate into the local community. I didn't play like football and kind of local sports, but I taught myself baseball and football and all these things, so I can kind of have these friends that I could relate to in that community. And on the other leg, my dad got us involved with, and my mom as well, in the local called the Bhagavad Gita study group.
Really?
Basically, we were studying our religious document from Hinduism, and I think certainly it was an intentional effort by my parents to keep us connected. And the other thing they did is that we went back to India often. I think almost every year I go back. So
that's. And from your perspective, do you feel like that's rare to be that engaged and intentional with spirituality at that age?
I don't know if it's rare in immigrant communities particularly. And it depends, right? I know people. I have a very good friend who's very Indian. He speaks the language, but he's never been to India, right? He was born here. Whereas others, they're very intentional about remaining connected so that you can stay in touch with your family in many ways. I would feel really weird if I went back to India and I couldn't speak the language with my grandparents or if my cousins and other folks. It feels like you're missing out on the experience if you're not connected in that way.
I was left to smiles, smiles and waves. Like for the longest time, it wasn't until I took a DNA test when I found out I was Chinese, because my parents are from Burma, and they spoke Burmese in the house, and I could understand it, but like the DNA test, when it came back 100% Chinese, I was a little shocked. And looking back, it makes sense. I've been told I don't look Burmese, I look Chinese, and it does. But my grandparents were in Burma as well, but they don't speak English, so I was never able to connect with them on that level. But as a kid, I don't know, I didn't have the resources or the intention to try my best to pick it up either. And so that's what I mean by like rare. It's just like you can't teach someone to care. Yeah. Especially at that age, it's like, or the realization to care.
Is there a big Burmese or population from Myanmar here in Chicago that you were connected into? Or no?
We had some aunts and uncles, we non-related, but that would be like the glue of the community. I would say it's a little bigger in Northwest Indiana, Minnesota, so it's a little all over. But there was a group, but when that glue, the person that hosts events and puts everything on, and every time, like if they leave, and kind of the group kind of falls apart.
Yeah,
and when that happened, I felt like my parents became hermits. Unfortunately.
Yeah. That's tough. And I think one of the things that's beneficial about India compared to a lot of the other kind of South Asian subcultures is that there's such a big population, right? It's over 1 billion people. But I've met people from Kyrgyzstan and Burma and Nepal and Sri Lanka and all these other places where you have to really work to cultivate that community, especially as kind of the glue and connecting threads start to leave. And so I certainly empathize, right? Like that's it's an interesting circumstance.
Sure. Yeah. So what age would you describe, it might be earlier than most, but a coming of age, like a point where you started down a path of identifying who you are to your core and what you enjoy doing and what you might want to eventually do with your life?
Yeah. I think for me, it's been an iterative process in terms of a coming of age. There's been certain inflection points in my life. I'd say kind of the big three for me. The first one was this shift from California to Ohio that I mentioned. Like that was kind of a big transition point for me. The second one came, I'd say year 4 of college for me. Where, when I went to university, I went on a scholarship. I was very lucky to get this kind of academic scholarship and be part of this honors program at the University of Cincinnati. And it kind of got to my head a lot. Some of the people that I was looking up to, they were highly involved on campus, leading student groups and this and that. And I was almost involved in student activities for the sake of being involved, to a point where I started 7 student organizations during my time in college. It was a newspaper, a career fair, venture capital thing.
When you mean that, do you mean to put more items on your resume?
It felt like resume building. It also felt like reputation building, like you are important because you were involved, because you sit in meetings with the university president and provost and all that. And it all came to a head. I went to California for an 8-month internship and at a private equity firm. And I just what is this? Like, I feel like 3 years into college, all I've done is go to meetings. I live in this fraternity house, and I haven't really gotten to know my friends. I haven't really gotten to know, to enjoy the collegiate experience. And so I came back with just a completely refreshed perspective. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just not going to care. I'm going to take classes outside of my domain of interest. So I took swimming and piano and a interpretive dance class, an engineering course. Like, I studied business, but I wanted to learn things outside of my domain. Wow. And I wanted to just be a kind, good friend and a better person. I felt like I was almost cutthroat to a point early, like as an 18 to 21 year old. Like, why am I being cutthroat? Like, well,
I get that sentiment from pre-meds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was just stupid. And so that completely just reframed my perspective. And,
just in time. Year 4.
Exactly. Just in time. And goodness, like my last year was like my best year of college. And I still try, I live here now and most of my friends are back in Cincinnati, but I still try to stay as connected as I can. I still have season football tickets to our university, all that, just to stay in touch, because those are kind of your true friends. And then the third inflection point, I'd say, happened last summer. So in addition to Azadi, I also work a full-time job.
Wow.
And I took a 6-month sabbatical.
Okay.
And, it's I work for a Swedish company. And so they offer this program. I'd been there 8 years. And so I actually went back to Harper College in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
And I decided I want to study things that I'm just really uncomfortable with, physical things. So I studied HVAC, studied HVAC, electronics, and then at home, woodworking. I started a garden in the Rolling Meadows Community Garden, painting, like all these things that had kind of an immediate gratification. You were building things with your hands. You turned your computer off. It wasn't on email. And you actually had to, you had to fix a heating system. Like it's either fixed or it's not fixed, right? And through that experience, I came out with kind of 4 core principles that I really deeply believe in. And they're being prepared, being present, being curious, and being industrious. Preparation, like I just feel like anytime I go into a situation, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's going into a meeting, and I'm prepared, I just come across a lot better. I feel more confident, right? So being prepared. Number 2 is being present. I just, as I have a young daughter at home, I can feed her and play with her while on my phone, or I can be like intensely into it. And I just feel like any situation I'm in, I want to be present and, not distracted by something else, because I'm not a good multitasker. The third is being curious, which obviously you're passionate about as well. But just learning, from college, kind of learning things outside of my domain. That's continued to this day. I buy a lot of textbooks, which is kind of weird, but I like learning about sociology and physics and, just all sorts of different topic areas. And in some ways, they all kind of interconnect. Like as you think of any sort of innovative idea, it's often the collision of 2 unrelated concepts.
Yeah, Charlie Munger has said that.
Coming together, right?
Yeah.
So I found that's really helpful. And then industrious, just constantly being hardworking, not being lazy, like just doing something practical, because you have limited time. And I think that comes back to when I got back from that California internship, was have limited time to really enjoy college. So I'm going to make the most of it. And that's kind of continued to this day. Yeah.
I love that. I couldn't love that enough. And it makes me think of this notion that you're born with a purpose. But I think if you stick to those 4 principles, a purpose can come out of that. Does that resonate with you? Like
I think so.
Do you think this search for this inherent purpose is elusive, and then more so rather than it coming out, like a sense of purpose comes out of adhering to certain principles?
Yeah, I think a sense of purpose comes out from recognizing what gives you energy and helps you sleep better at night, right?
Okay.
Like I just feel like if I live my life by those principles, if I can have a daily checklist, was I present, was I prepared, was I curious, was I industrious in what I did, then I feel like I fulfilled my purpose for that day.
Yeah.
And, that probably plays into some sort of long-term purpose where, 10 years from now, if I look back, do I feel like I got the most out of life that I could have and kind of achieved my purpose? If I'm consistently following those principles, I feel like I'd get there. So,
okay.
Yeah.
As you were nearing the end of time in college, were you happy, satisfied with how you ended your 4th year, as well as did that transition from 3rd year to 4th year give you a fresh perspective on what you might want to do, and whether or not that was I mean, obviously it's still business, but like, did that like, oh, should I even be doing business now? Like,
yeah. Was I satisfied? I'd say, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do college very differently, right? I'd be much more social and not as engaged, but I wouldn't know that unless I made those mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's those mistakes that form you, that shape you. And so, there's kind of two answers to the question. One is if I was giving someone else advice based on my experience, I'd tell them to do something very different than me. But looking back, I'm glad it went the way it did, because it's really informed the rest of my life and how I live.
Which brings up another notion of sacrifice and trade-offs, right? And it's just like, if you didn't do all those things, what would you have done? So you would have socialized more, but then that would have probably not led to all the opportunities that came your way.
Correct. Yeah. I still kind of lean on my network that I formed there. Like, I was hyper involved, so I met a lot of important people. And so that was kind of cool. And I think, I mentioned I started all these student groups. I just discovered I have a distaste for bureaucracy. I tried to get involved in student government and all these things. And I just felt like, oh gosh, like all these people that are in these organizations, they just keep doing the same events over and over. It's almost like a checklist of here's what we do. And I was like, I just want to go back to first principles. Like, if I were to start a student organization, what would it do? How would it operate? How would we actually do something that's valuable for students? And that's, governed the work I do today. Like, whether it's at my full-time job, whether it's at Azadi Brewing, I don't have this fear of starting something anymore. It's like, okay, like, hey, there's not a brewery that kind of does what I want it to do. Rather than, maybe join one and try to shift it, I'm just going to start my own. And I think it's been really informative for me.
There's a purpose to checks and balances as far as bureaucracy goes, but like, how much red tape do you have to go through to make change happen?
Yeah. It's, I think it's the perception of red tape more than anything, more so than, often it's rules and things. I discovered, a lot of rules can be kind of bent, or rules exist just because something happened 20 years ago, but it hasn't happened since, but we've just kept it in place. Like, there's this, kind of feeling that things, we do a lot of things just because that's how we've always done them. But I think it's always important to consistently challenge, why am I actually doing this way? And I think a lot of large organizations where you feel the bureaucracy and people stuck in, there's a lot of people in corporate jobs that kind of feel that weight. It's not because these rules are needed. Some are important for safety and all that, but it's often just because this is just how we've always done them, and people don't like change. And I think that's an important thing to get over.
Yeah. So if you're in your experience, if you have an answer, like, what's the best way to implement change in such a large organization?
Yeah, I found, two things. One is, I think sometimes organizations are just too large, right? Like, if you look at the size of the kind of U.S. corporations and things like that, companies are too big. So you have to kind of find your, in this large ecosystem, create kind of a sub-ecosystem, right? Like a subculture, and try to operate in there. I think that's important. So whether that's, you're part of a large company, but you're part of a local office, or you're part of a local team, right? How can you make the most of that environment under the constraints that you're in? I think that's one. Two is, if you're a leader and you're trying to lead change, right? You're trying to shift your business, your culture, whatever it might be, you need to bring people along, right? They need to feel involved in the change. I think people hate it when the change is just brought on them, like, hey, we're doing this today, right? But if they feel like they had an active hand in informing whatever's changing,
right,
there's probably a greater comfort with that as well.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any other incentives. So when companies are incentivizing people to come back from remote work, usually with like a $10,000-$15,000 bonus to come back in person, why didn't they just say it's for the better of the culture? Like, and because you would hear, like, if you've been so used to working remotely, you're not as familiar with the water cooler conversations, and you don't have those conversations anymore. And so you don't know the people that you work with. And so you feel kind of like alone when you go back in person.
I think so. And it's a little bit of kind of this whole return to work thing is age related too, right? Like, I remember some of my best relationships I made were in my 20s when I was in the office, and I would hang out and go to trivia with my coworkers, happy hour and things. Like, I think it's very important in an era where people are feeling lonelier and lonelier to have social connections. And the workplace, since you spend so much time there, is an important place young in life to create those social connections. As you get older, as I am now, I also see the flip side of the convenience of being at home. If I'm on a Zoom meeting all day, why bother coming in? Why take an hour-long train ride when I can spend that hour with my daughter, right?
Yeah.
And for folks thinking about, well, how do I get that kind of generation, older folks that are mentors or leaders to come in? You've got to create a pull, right? It's not a push thing where you're required to come in, but create an environment in the office that you don't want to miss out on. You want to almost create a FOMO of, all of our events that are really fun are in person. We don't have a video option because we're doing something hands-on and experiential, whatever it might be. Yeah. So I think you have to create an environment where people want to come rather than enforce it in today's world.
Yeah, and this whole conversation reminds me of what Elon's doing, and like there's multiple angles to this. I saw a post from a friend who was like affected by this, and it's just like how sudden it happened, and how his life has been shaken up by this, and so, but from an Elon's perspective, it's like, is it that hard to put into words how valuable you are? Yeah. And I don't know. I'm sure there's so much gray area with that.
There's a lot of gray area. And, I think I'll separate Elon, the person, from Elon, the businessman, because I did get a chance to read Walter Isaacson's biography on him. And it was really interesting. He has something called the algorithm that he applies to any business that he goes into, and basically the algorithm is come in and challenge every assumption, right? Why are at SpaceX, why are we spending thousands of dollars on this part? Can we just make it ourselves? Can we do it for cheaper? And there's things where he had multiples of cost efficiency just by first principles thinking and just challenging assumptions. The second is cut down every process until you have to add 10% back. So cut it down to its core, right? Of what's happening. And that's the playbook he used when he took over Twitter and renamed it to X. And a lot of people are like, well, you can't run Twitter with, a fraction of the headcount, and it's still running, right? And so I think challenging assumptions, and that's kind of what he's applied to government is like, are you adding value? Yeah. Are you doing all that? Now, the methods, right, of, sudden job cuts and all this stuff, like it's, I think there's a better way to do it, right? But it's not, for folks that are unfamiliar, it can seem shocking, but it's straight out of his playbook that he's applied for 2 decades now. Okay. So,
and so as you were starting to brainstorm options for jobs in your fourth year, what were some options present to you? Or is it more school at the time?
No. Yeah, it was my fifth year actually. So I was in a program where every other semester of university we had to work a job in a real place, and so it's called a co-op program. And so you got a paid internship, and that was really nice for students because you used money you made one semester, you paid for tuition the next semester, and you got real world experience. Enough.
Oh, wow.
Enough. And I was doing I was a DJ in college, and I did all sorts of other stuff, right? But it was kind of a nice gig to have. But I also got a variety of experiences. I worked in kind of venture capital and private equity and wealth management, like all sorts of different industries. And so I had this perception that I really wanted to be in finance. I had a finance major, so I should be in finance. So I took a job at a big bank, and I hated it. And coming back to bureaucracy, right? Why would someone who hates bureaucracy take a job at a big bank? I didn't realize that until the very end. But I wanted to have this group of friends. I wanted to move to a new city. And all these big banks and big companies, they have these leadership programs, right? Where 25 students join from different universities, you connect, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that'd be kind of fun. Like meet a new group of friends, move to a new city, and then we'll figure it out. And then in under a year, I ended up switching to a consulting firm, which I'm still at today. So,
yeah. Was there anything you liked about it though?
About the first job?
Yeah.
I think it's that sense of connection, right? Yeah. I think that was important. And as a personality, I do a lot of like practical jokes and things. And so I brought a sense of levity, I think, to a stodgy industry,
sure.
Which was fun. And I think we formed a lot of good connections that way. So, for me, it was the human factor that was important. And also, I just realized like all these things I didn't know. Like I felt like I was learning
Yeah.
things along the way. Like I didn't really, I kind of knew what a bank did, but I really didn't. Right.
Sure,
And
sure,
I was
sure.
learning along the way too. Which
Yeah.
is nice.
Was there a realization of like, wow, there are some very wealthy people here?
In that case, no.
Or reframe your relationship with money at all?
Yeah. No, actually.
Okay.
And it's kind of uncommon sense, right? You'd think like you're working at a big financial institution, that would be the case. What I found was that there's a lot of people that were working for the sake of working. Like it felt like there's a lot of like zombies kind of checking in and out of the elevator every day.
Damn, yeah.
And not just at the bank, but just at other companies, even in that same building. Like you're just doing it to collect the paycheck, but you're missing kind of your purpose.
What about some of the organizations or clients that you might be working with, though?
Yeah, that's what inspired me. Actually.
Okay.
So I'd say like, you know, the employee structure, all that. Like I was like, this kind of sucks working in a bank. But the companies that we banked, I was really inspired by. I was like, wow, this entrepreneur like had this idea to start a company that makes industrial gloves. Like, who would have thought that's $1 million company, right? And again, it sparked my entrepreneurial interest, where I was like, that I would much rather be on the side getting the loan than giving the loan.
Yeah.
And that's you know part of the reason why I left. And yeah.
Okay, so what was the next step? Was there a gap between
There's no
the
gap.
opportunities?
Funny enough, I was walking along Adams Street off of Wacker, and one of my college friends I saw the back of his head. He's kind of a taller person, curly hair, and I was like, hey, is that him? And so I tapped him on the back, and I realized he'd moved to Chicago to work at this a Swedish consulting firm. And I was like, hey, we should catch up, blah, blah, blah. And so we caught up, and he thought it was just a catch up. I was like, no. Tell me, how do I get a job at your company and do what you do? And, I interviewed, I applied, and ended up working there. And that was a really fun ride. And it's been a fun ride to this day, joining a company that was much smaller, much more entrepreneurial, founder-led, and kind of on an upward trajectory of growing. It was almost like a pirate ship, right? Where at a bank, you have rules, you have structures. Here, it's like, yeah, client wants to do this, we'll figure it out. They want to build a museum, I'll build a museum for them. Like we did all sorts of funky, kind of off-the-wall projects, and it played much better into my personality.
Okay,
of
so
being more creative.
Similar work, but more flexibility?
Very different work.
Different
I'd say.
work.
Yeah. So banking, like, you're kind of issuing loans and you're assessing credit worthiness. This was client comes and says, hey, like we need to develop a new vehicle, or we need to shift our leadership culture to be more innovative, whatever it might be. There's all these kind of strategic people related challenges that this consulting firm works on. And then we have to come up with a way that differentiates us from all the big players. And so you have to be creative and scrappy and hustle.
Whoa.
And that really played well into what I really love to do. So,
and despite it being Swedish, you still felt a tight-knit culture? Like, how often would you see the founder?
We wouldn't see the founder, but this kind of comes to the subcultures conversation. He'd stop by every once in a while. But, our local office in Chicago had 27 people.
Oh, wow.
And so we were all on one floor. We were in kind of a bullpen together. And so having kind of that group of under 30 people closely connected, working together on similar challenges, I think kind of when you're in the trenches together doing work and traveling together and all that stuff, that's where you form your bonds. That's where you form your connections.
Did you join at a time when the services of the group were sought after, or is there any kind of sales aspect to it?
They were certainly unique. So the company, it's called BTS. They were and are the global leader in business simulation. So basically, if a company is making a big strategic shift, right, going from a culture where they're selling software on CDs to selling subscriptions, for example. Not every leader understands the mechanics of what that looks like for the customer, for how you operate your business. And so they built simulations for leaders to practice before they play. Oh. So before you go out and make $1 million decision, you can practice in a hyper-realistic environment, running your company, running your business, going through challenges. And so that concept of highly experiential learning, practice, all of that really landed well. I joined at a time where, to your question, the service offering was expanding. So how do you become an end-to-end people strategy partner to Fortune 500 companies? So how do you provide coaching service to shift leader mindsets? How do you assess who would be a great fit for the role?
Yeah.
All of those things kind of added to that.
That to me, that's overwhelming. Overwhelming, but a challenge I would embrace. But I would also, part of me would probably feel, if I were to start, as an imposter of like, these are great, already successful people. Like, who am I? Who am I to give this advice?
Yeah. There's certainly a lot of imposter syndrome, right? If you're a 20-something meeting with an executive at a company that's running $1 billion business, you're like, you've never done it before. So who am I to give advice, right? And I think one of the realizations that I had throughout that process was that, it's not my job to come in and be an expert. I really don't think, it's my job to access the latent intelligence that sits in a company. Like my belief and our belief is that, hey, you have smart people. Maybe just because you've been doing the same thing for 30 years, you haven't been exposed to new ideas, or you need someone to kind of shake up your thinking. It's our job to kind of highlight, hey, like, what are the great performers doing in your company? How do we codify that? How do we replicate that? And also, what are some assumptions that are long held that we should start challenging a little bit because our business environment's changed, our customers changed, all of that. So we came in as kind of provocateurs rather than being experts on their business. And that
so you're probably great at asking questions.
I try to be. I think I'm getting better. And all these things, I just feel like I'm every day I try to improve a little bit.
Oh, I love that so much. And you said going on 8 years?
Coming up on 8 years now. So yeah.
You don't hear that too often. You hear a lot of people bouncing around these days.
There's a lot of bouncing around. I think people bounce around because they're sometimes bored, right? Like sometimes the compensation is not the factor. Some people it is, but they don't feel like their purpose is being fulfilled, or they don't feel like they're kind of maximizing their potential. And for me, I just feel like I've always had these kind of new challenges come up where like, oh, well, I've never done that before. So that's a big challenge. So that's been a lot of fun. And then simultaneously doing that and them being open to me running the brewery, like that's been amazing too. So it's been really cool to kind of balance the early stage and then also see from the consulting side, the big companies and how they work. So,
oh, I love that. Is it 8 years later still 27 person strong?
No, much bigger.
I
think when I joined the company globally, it was around 300. Now it's 1,200, 38 offices.
Okay.
So, our local office is closing in on 80 people or so. And you're starting to feel the effects of that, where less connected, you're coming out of a pandemic, less people in the office, all that stuff, right? So that's we feel similar pains as other companies.
Yeah, but I'm sure you do still feel like you have an effect on culture.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. I think culture is very much the little moments, right? Of it's like the observable behaviors. Like when you're in the office, are you just sitting in an office on Zoom, or are you like making an effort to go talk to people? Are you sharing articles because you want to be curious and help people learn? Like all these little things that demonstrate the culture are important, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like friendship. It's a two-way street. Yes. You said earlier you try your best to stay in touch with people from even Ohio, and sometimes friendship can become a one-way street. Correct. And you're like, why? Like I keep reaching out. Why isn't my friend reaching out?
I feel that way sometimes. I feel I feel very when I moved to Chicago, like I had a big friend group from Cincinnati that came, and then slowly, kind of one by one, they all started moving back. They had families, whatever, right? Sure. And so I'm probably at a point right now where I've got to kind of form a new friend group and form new relationships, and that's hard. I mean, making adult friends is very hard, especially when you're busy with the family and work and all these other things. But I just think like you've got to kind of put yourself out there a little bit and, see what you can do.
Yeah. I guess jumping ahead a little bit, like what would you attribute because I get a palpable sense of your appreciation and admiration for Chicago. Mm-hmm. Like where did that come from?
First of all, the city's beautiful, right? Like I go to downtown anywhere else, and then you go down kind of the Riverwalk, and wow, this is a city. Okay. I was at this happy hour event with the head football coach at the University of Cincinnati, this guy named Scott Satterfield. And he's like, I've never been to Chicago before. He's from North Carolina. This is amazing. I got to bring my wife here. I was like, it is an amazing city to just look at. So that's one.
Okay.
It's just a great place to live. Okay. Number two, compared to New York, San Francisco, other places, I like kind of the Midwestern vibe to it. Okay. There's still a friendliness to the city.
Yeah.
Because of the Great Chicago Fire, I feel like the roads are easy to navigate, right? It's structured in a good way.
The grid, yeah.
The grid, kind of the physical nature. But then finally, I think the most important thing is the cultures that are here, right? You go from communities that are Asian to Latin to, up on Devon, kind of South Asian and in Indian, like Polish communities, like so much cultural diversity here that kind of comes together. I just love it. I just think that every neighborhood has a different story to tell. Every person who comes to Chicago can find some sort of place in the community, and just like myself. And I just don't see a reason to leave. Like, I've got everything that I would want here. Family, friends, all that. So I just think it's an amazing place. Yeah, obviously room for improvement.
Did your wife have an effect on your 100%. Love and appreciation?
100%. Yeah. She introduced me to restaurants. She's a big foodie, so she introduced me to restaurants and her cousins and all that, right? Like, so she's certainly kept me here. I think I would have also likely gone back if I had not married someone from Chicago, but she's kind of led me on this path to appreciating the city a lot more, and I've really appreciated that. Yeah.
And so, at what point in your journey with consulting, or at what point did you reconnect with Gator, the co-founder?
Yeah. So Gator and I, we were friends since high school in Cincinnati. So I met him my freshman year of high school, I believe, long time ago. And he's super social. He brought me into kind of his friend group and kind of took this kind of kid who was kind of fish out of water at that point in time. And gave me kind of a home.
Did you also live close?
We lived close. Yeah, we lived in the same community.
Oh, okay.
Well, if you know, not in the same neighborhood, but the same area in Cincinnati.
Like bikeable?
Not bikeable. It's a 10-minute drive.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So nearby.
All right.
But he's really kind of my first best friend in Cincinnati, and I owe so much to him because he kind of really helped me enjoy my high school experience. And we played baseball together. And I was the officiant at his wedding. Fast forward kind of past college, we went to different universities.
Was that the first wedding you officiated?
Oh yeah, first and last.
How did it go?
It went really well.
You're very well spoken. I mean, were you always this well spoken?
No, I don't think so. I don't know why I'm well. Maybe it's just because it could be language related too. Because I've always often had to kind of translate like what I mean in my native language to English and say it in a concise way. So that could be part of it. I don't know why. I've always enjoyed being on stage and stuff too.
Well, based on how curious I'm getting from you, I feel like you've consumed a lot of material.
Yes.
And that obviously just lends to being able to communicate.
I think so. Yeah. It sounds weird, but I still read a physical newspaper every day.
Okay.
I read The Economist. Like I subscribe to Scientific American magazines, all this stuff.
It's inevitable.
Right? Yeah. So I love to learn.
Okay.
That's really important. But your point on reconnecting with Gator. So officiated his wedding.
Yeah.
We were away at university, so we kind of had separate lives. And then right before the pandemic, Gator made a really bold move. He had a career in IT, and he quit on encouragement from his wife, and he went back to school to study brewing science. He was passionate about home brewing, all that. So he's studying brewing science, and at the same time, I was really into kind of Indian cooking. I was reconnecting with culinary stuff. I'd never cooked before. My mom kind of did it, and I was like, I need to learn this stuff. I'm on my own.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, why don't we take Indian ingredients that we get from our local store, put them in craft beer, and see what happens. And so that's what we did. I was in Cincinnati. I went to him. I was like, hey, Gator, I have this idea. I want to do an Indian brewery, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, sure. Let's try it out. So on weekends, we'd go to his garage. I'd stop by the grocery store. I'd bring lemongrass or black pepper and other stuff. And we'd brew with it. And people liked it. And so, that was kind of the origin story. It turned into something from that. So.
Wow. So Gator sounds like another individual that just takes a chance on themselves. So you said he left before going to school, or he was doing school like brewing science at the same time as
he graduated from Ohio State, went to a great school, studied information sciences there, worked in IT at an insurance company, similar to me, did not like it at a big corporation. And so at that time, he'd bought kind of these homebrew kits. And so his wife was like, why don't you just do this full time? So he just quit, went to brewing science. He studied brewing science at Cincinnati State University. And then he started very much at the bottom, right? He was a cellarman and kind of packaging and doing all these things.
At other breweries?
At other breweries. Now he works at Sam Adams. But, from the ground up. And he hustled his way to kind of where he's gotten to. So I really respect that about him.
You guys brewing out of a garage reminds me of that Easy episode on Netflix. There's a Chicago-based show on Netflix called Easy.
Okay.
And it's like there's 3 seasons, and each season, one episode follows like the same characters throughout all 3 seasons. And there's an arc about 2 brothers that started garage brewing and then eventually collab with Dark Matter on stouts, and it's this juxtaposition of one brother who is the creative behind the brand and is experimental and wants, doesn't want to just put out the next same hazy IPA type thing. And then the other brother is like more business focused and be like, we need to keep producing the fan favorites.
Sure.
So that kind of, and there's, I think in season 2 or 3, the creatives rip the garage door. They put the garage door in the brewery and they rip it off the wall like one drunken night, and they put it like, they go back to the garage and be like, we're back to this underground type thing. And that reminds me of that. Like, I'm sure those are some of the fondest memories of just being in the lab.
Of course, yeah. As we're coming up on 5 years of Azadi Brewing, right? Like those are awesome, right? Like we would not be where we are today without Gator. Like I sincerely mean that. Like he took, our relationship is very much, I'm kind of the experimental, crazy thinker. I was like, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Right? And he's operational. He's like, okay, like how do we actually execute this and make it happen?
Yeah.
He took kind of my crazy ideas, turned them into recipes, and we've had a really good partnership since. Even though he lives in Cincinnati, I'm in Chicago.
Yeah.
We partner really well together, and in some ways, we have to push ourselves a little bit because we're naturally slow. Like we don't do a lot of marketing. If you look at our Instagram or social media, we're not publishing a lot. We want to build a very organic fan base for the brewery. Like we want people to love our beer, recommend it to others, and kind of organically discover the beer. And we've kind of slowed our growth because of that. It's just we want to be hyper focused on Chicago. No plans of expanding kind of beyond the area. We do a little bit in Milwaukee because that's where some of our production is. But we're now starting to think about, okay, well, what's the next step for us, and how do we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone as well? So,
damn. Okay. So Chicago was a clear choice for home.
Yeah.
Okay. Before Pilot Project and after, like between garage brewing, what were some of the things in your mind to help make it real or put it out there? Like, how long could you come up with or continue brewing in the garage?
Not legally, right? For commercial scale, right?
Yeah.
So like it was, if we were going to go from friends and family to doing something scalable, we had to find a contract manufacturer to actually brew the beer for us. And so that's kind of how we landed in Chicago. Like the reason we opened in Chicago and not Cincinnati or any other place was that we felt like there was a really strong culinary scene. So people would appreciate beers that had unique cultural flavors. So for example, we use mango that we import from the western part of India. It only grows a few months out of the year. It's our Kesar mango IPA called Gear. We use South Indian cardamom, like things that you normally wouldn't see in craft beer. But we thought the Chicago community would be receptive to it because it's such a strong culinary and craft beer community here. And we also felt like there was this community of craft brewers that we could really lean on. We're kind of the young brewery in town, right? So we have a lot to learn, and we kind of sit on the shoulders of the giants that have come before us. And so we just thought it was a great place to do that. And we love Chicago. So it was sad when like Revolution's like tap room was
But yeah, I mean, that being said, if we were to jump ahead again, it's just like, what do you think the climate is on craft beer at the moment?
Yeah. To your point, like I don't drink a lot.
Okay.
Honestly, like I love the art and science of beer.
Yeah.
Fermentation is this art form that's existed for thousands of years, right? Like from the earliest beer that was produced in Iran, right? Like it's been around forever. So I just love like the science of fermentation and that. I obviously love to, drink our beer and other beers as well, but I'm not like a heavy drinker by any means. And I think that generally people are drinking less. If you look at some of the generational trends, non-alcoholic is exploding. Yeah. Canned cocktails, all these kind of things are kind of exploding in nature. And so as a craft brewery, it you can't just kind of sit in a corner and say, no, we're just going to make beer and, drink it if you want to. You have to kind of adapt to customers as well. And so I think there's two kind of adaptations we're looking at. One is whether you drink or not, how do you create a community around Azadi, right? How do you create a community where Indians, people from South Asia, they feel really included, they're connected together. And so we do a lot of work sponsoring cultural events. So we have 2 dance competitions coming up that we're supporting, partnering with other brands that are South Asian in nature to create a community. I think craft, you go to any tap room, it's about bringing people together. I think that's really important. And second is, how do we do things in a way that's just unapologetically who we are, right?
Yeah.
We're not trying to create this mass-produced beer or anything like that. We want to make Indian flavors, Indian beers, and people should see themselves in our beer because the name is Indian, the label, which my wife actually designs, they're Indian, the description is Indian. Like, that's our niche. We're really proud of it, and we try to lean into that. So,
okay, wow. And I agree with all that. And I think one thing that led to me leaving, and maybe I'll just blame my palate, but like all the beers started blending together.
Yeah.
And I was unable to distinguish one hazy from another hazy. And I liked hazies, but it's interesting. I think a lot of people went back to just regular beer.
Macro beer, right? Yeah, right? Those are doing really well. Like Modelo's #1 beer in America right now. I get it, right? Like there's nothing stopping me from enjoying like a Miller High Life this weekend. That's totally fine. And there's a place for that. Like, I think, we as a community, we don't need to be snooty about craft beer. Like, everyone has a preference. That's okay. You might not like every single Azadi beer. I'm fine with that. But if you try it, if you learn something, good for us. Yeah.
Yes. And then to go off of community, I know the Filipino community goes really hard for each other. Do you feel like you've met that with the Indian community?
To an extent. What's interesting about India is before the British came, and before even like the Mughals, so kind of that community, it was a series of kingdoms, independent kingdoms. And really the British were kind of brought it together into one Raj, as they called it. And so India has all these subcultures, languages. I think there's over 25 national or official languages in India, and all these sub-languages too. So if you go to the southern part of India, you've got kind of 4 distinctive languages and communities. You go to the western part, you've got distinctive north, etc. And when those folks migrate here, they often stay with their communities. Like we have something called the Telugu community, or I'm in the Gujarati community. And so it's a bit more of a pull than you would think. We're all from the same country, but different sub-communities. Yeah. To bring those people together and kind of see eye to eye. And so that's the effort that, we are really passionate about. So if you look at some of our beers, they actually feature concepts from different parts of India. So we have a beer called Bind, which means village in Punjabi. And so it's a kind of farmhouse style ale using yeast that Gator actually harvested himself in the woods. And so that's it represents that part of the country. We have the one we did with Tatu, Kavi, means poet. It's representative of a place called Kerala, which is southern part of India. So we try to bring the community together through beer. It's our medium, at least, to do that. So but like I'm sure you've gotten feedback, right? Like, this is amazing to see our culture on the shelves and to be able to drink. People love that. Yeah, people love that. We're super proud of it.
Yeah. My first, they don't do too many Indian beers per se, but the brothers behind more brewing.
Yeah. They did such a great job. They, great immigrant story, right? To what I understand, liquor store owners, people that kind of immigrated to the U.S. and then transitioned that into a brewery now, I think 3 or 4 locations.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Doing really well. And they still have Indian items on their menu. So I think, awesome. The more the merrier. We don't see it as competition or anything like that. We just think like the more communities we can represent through different foods, drinks, etc., like the better.
Right. Tell me your introduction with Pilot Project.
Yeah. Pilot Project, I think they started basically the year we started. So 2020 was kind of their first year brewing, is my understanding, earlier that year. And I met Dan Abel, who's their founder, and his concept really resonated with me. And the premise basically was that, if you're a musical artist, you wouldn't need to go build an entire recording studio to record a song. So why in craft beer, to produce a beer, do you have to build an entire brewery? It's pay millions of dollars to do that. And so that's kind of how Pilot formed. And the reason I think we had a really good connection, one was just quality. Like we had to do like a Shark Tank like pitch competition there. And we demoed 3 of our beers. One was Govey, which was our cardamom golden ale. The second was Gear, our Kesar mango IPA. And then we did our Gadak, which is our chai stouts, a Mumbai 100-year-old recipe from Mumbai.
And are they staples to this day?
They're staples to this day.
Amazing.
And they loved it. And they also loved the design and the story behind the brand. So my wife is a designer, so she kind of built out the brand image. And if you look at kind of the logo that we use, there's a story behind all of that. Yeah. And it really helped us kind of get to market, because the infrastructure that they had to brew, to go to stores like Konbini and Kompai and other places, helped us go from concept to kind of a minimal viable product to something on the shelf. And then since then, we've kind of scaled with them. As they've grown, we've also grown as well.
There's so much value with that.
Yes.
There's so much value. So how did the pitch go for you guys? Was it pretty smooth?
I thought it was a slam dunk. And but it comes back to my core values, preparation. We prepared so much for that pitch, right? From the designs to how many times we rehearsed, like we were ready when we showed up there, and we had it crisp. And I think if we just showed up casually, like it wouldn't have gone as well. So the preparation really mattered.
Yeah. How much back and forth were you going between, or was Gator coming back and forth?
A lot.
Or,
okay. Yeah. The initial brew days, like while we were kind of dialing in our recipes, Gator was here for those.
So you both had equipment?
No, we were brewing at Pilot Project.
Oh, by then you were
kind
brewing
of in the back. Yeah.
So you can brew there and then pitch after?
Oh, sorry. We pitched using a garage beer. So right.
So was this garage beer from Ohio?
Yeah.
Oh,
we brought it over. Yeah. Oh. So it was, no one got sick. So we're okay.
No. You do what you gotta do.
So yeah, we brought that over. Wow. And I remember like for the cardamom golden ale, like Gator he did so many batches so quickly, because the moment Pilot said, "Hey, we want an audition," they also pulled up the date. They're like, "Can you actually do it a month in advance?" Oh shit, we got to brew beer fast. So we brewed a lot of beer really quickly. Kind of prayed that it worked. Yeah, showed up. It landed really well. And then after they accepted us, that's when Gator would come back and forth.
Because I don't know, what's the usual turnaround time on beers like that?
2 weeks is kind of a reasonable time frame to look at. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Is there anything that you guys do in your process to, like, during the 2 weeks, like, so you're not just waiting, or is it just simply a waiting game?
There's adjuncts and additives and things that you can do, but really, like, you're starting to think about the next beer, right? If you go to any brewery, there's multiple tanks, so you kind of have a brew day, you fill a tank, and then next day you're kind of brewing something else, you're filling another tank. So you're kind of on a bit of a rotation and using those tanks, because those tanks are fermenting the beer and kind of getting it ready to serve.
Wow. Okay, so the slam dunk, how soon after did they get back to you guys?
I can't remember the exact timeline. It must have been within a week or so. It wasn't that long. And I was so excited. I remember being downstairs at my condominium downtown, and I called Gator. I was like, we got in, we're doing it. And that's when it really felt real for us. Yeah. Like, it wasn't just this side project. It was like, oh, we got a brewery here. And, now it's our job to kind of make it something. So.
And so with that, was everything included in the sense of production, manufacturing and canning as well as distribution from the get-go? Like this is the opportunity that's available to you. Your pitch needs to be solid in order to get this.
Yeah, it's included, but it's a lot of work on both sides, right? They've got the infrastructure, but we have to make sure the recipe works, right? So we're doing a lot of kind of R&D on the recipe. Distribution wise, like I'm in stores every week, kind of pitching the beer. So it's not like a turnkey thing. But what really helps is that they've got, I don't have to do all the deliveries myself. So they've got drivers and all that stuff. So it helps. You obviously pay a fee for that service. It would probably be more profitable if we did it ourselves. But I think when you're starting off, it makes sense to.
It's kind of like the ghost kitchens in the pandemic.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Despite what I'm hearing, Zubair said it was like they take an enormous fee.
Huge
it's
cut.
Crazy.
Yeah.
When you guys got it, then was there any part of Gator that was reluctant to share some of the creative process or part of the responsibilities of production, and or did he not care?
I think there's enough trust. You're saying between us and Pilot Project,
because they're brewing, right? They're brewing for you.
Beer.
Okay.
Yeah. There's enough trust there that I think and the craft beer community is very trusting as well. Like I think we're rooting for each other's success, and so that was fine with us. We didn't care. Like we just felt like we had something really authentic and different to offer. If other people draw inspiration from it, great. That's I hope you use more cardamom in your beer. Fine, whatever.
So what were some shelf space or restaurants that you initially wanted to partner with?
Our first big target was this restaurant called Rue, downtown Chicago. And at that time, man, they were the spot, right? High-end Indian cuisine, West Loop. Like we want to be at Rue. So we did a demo there. Their chef, Sujan Sarkar, was there. And
wait, so is Rue no longer around?
It's still around.
It's still around?
Yeah, they're
because
great.
he has Indian.
He has Indian now. Yeah. And he was there. He's like, I don't drink beer, but I like this. I like this mango beer that you got. He smelled it and he's like, yep, that's it. And so we started on the menu at Rue. That really helped us. They were great partners. And he later, when he opened Indian, he brought us into Indian as well. He still remembered that mango beer. And
is that a prefix menu?
It's like a tasting course.
It is,
that they have, and so just won a Michelin star. So they're really, really talented.
So pairings then. Is there pairings with the?
I think it's a less beer centric menu. It's a lot of wine pairings and things, right? It's beer doesn't play well at every single concept. But we were really happy that he brought us in when they opened. So that was kind of the big one. And then after that, like we were just so excited just to see our, when you're building something, you see your product on the shelf. We were at Garfield's and Whole Foods and West Loop and all these different places. Bitter Pops.
Whole Foods is huge.
Whole Foods is huge. Initially, we were at kind of single locations, and then this past fall, we were at every location in Illinois and Wisconsin. So they kind of did a pilot with us during the month of Diwali. To kind of celebrate Indian culture. So we had 3 of our beers. Jago, which is our chicory amber ale. It's a collaboration with a local artist named Jenny Vyas.
Okay.
Was kind of the feature beer at Whole Foods across the state, which was amazing.
What did they say that like you need to, like how well does the beer need to perform in order for it to be stocked in every location in Illinois?
You've got to move volume, right? I think craft, you've got limited shelf space at any single grocery store. And honestly, like, some locations for us, like in certain suburbs, didn't do as well because they're not moving as much beer. Their downtown locations really did well for us in terms of sales. And so now we're kind of working with them on a strategy of, okay, like what locations does it make sense to stay in?
Yeah.
Are there places where maybe we'll come back in a few years after we've grown a little bit more?
The Whole Foods downtown was the first Whole Foods, or which
West
Whole
Loop
Foods?
was the first Whole Foods location that took us.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of, the bottle shops that I would visit are not in the Loopish.
No.
And so if I were looking for craft beer, I remember going to Whole Foods, not finding too many craft per se. Like when I started seeing like Maplewood in cans, I was like, what? Maplewood is in cans and on Whole Foods? I'm like, it's cool. You just don't find too many craft beers in Whole Foods.
You don't. Yeah. And that's fine, right? They've got kind of a limited selection. Depends on the store as well, kind of what you get. If you go to
more opportunity
Roscoe
for you
Village.
guys.
Yeah, exactly. Roscoe Village, other locations, they have a lot.
Yeah.
But beyond Whole Foods, what we're really proud of is our partnership with those local bottle shops. Bitter Pops, Bottles and Cans, Beer Miscuous has had us ever since we started. Like all these places that really highlight craft beer. Like we were so pumped to be there, and we try to do as many tastings as we can at these spots too. So,
damn. Okay. Wow. And that was year one.
That was year one. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy to think about, but we had a crazy year one. And then ever since then, it's just been kind of a steady growth. I'd say we went from 0 to a lot very quickly. And then our goal since then has been to steadily grow. Because we were, as any small business, we were dealing with all sorts of issues, stockouts, right? Like restaurants like Tattoo, they would want our beer. We'd be like, we're sold out of that. We're sold out. So then like year 2, 3 was, okay, well, how do we figure out how to keep product in stock, set up a calendar? Then we were like, oh, well, we need to do more innovation. So in 1 year, I think we launched like 24 beers in a single year. And so we're like, we need a bunch of recipes because if we open a tasting room, we want to have recipes ready to go.
Yeah.
So Pilot's been great for that. Like they've helped us scale so that we don't stock out. They've also helped us experiment so that we consistently stay fresh. This summer, we're doing a new culinary series highlighting different food from different parts of India. And so there's all sorts of cool things that you can do. And, we're very lucky to have partners in Chicago that enable us to do that.
Yeah. You both have day jobs still.
Yes. Yeah.
He's still in the beer world, but a day job to the point where you can afford to move slow.
Correct. Yeah. There's pros and cons, right? Like at some point you've got to kind of rip off the Band-Aid and just go all in. We've heard that from many people. But in today's world where you can do work virtually and all that, you've got a little bit more runway, I'd say, to like go a little slower, and it helps us not rush. Like we're not in such a rush where we're just pushing sales, we're pushing low quality product or anything like that. Our beer has a shelf life, and we're really proud to kind of continuously brew fresh beer for folks.
Okay.
But eventually, I hope to get it to a point where, we can, fully commit and go all in.
What about Benny's? Is it hard to get in Benny's?
No, several locations have us there as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And do you feel like you want this to be a full-time job, or and there's no right answer. There's no right or wrong. It's just like, would it be okay if it was just a side gig for the entire,
I'd love for it for a full-time job. I really would. We face industry headwinds and all that, like other brewers, right? Like of operating in a very competitive market with a shrinking customer base. And so, every time we can kind of weather a new storm, whether it's COVID or whether it's this, it refines our product. It proves out that we kind of deserve to exist, deserve to be on a shelf. And it proves to us more that, hey, like we can actually make this a full-time thing. And so I'd love for it to do that. But I also love the work I do in consulting, and I love the work that we do elsewhere. And I don't think in 2025 you need to just do one. I think you can do multiple things and have a very successful, a fulfilling career, being in a few different places.
Yeah. Do you think, unless you already are getting help for like tastings, you said you've been doing all these tastings.
I do it myself. Yeah, it's you can get help. You can hire people. It's not crazy, but I love meeting customers. Like I want to make a beer and I want to see someone drink it and I want to see their reaction. I want their feedback. That's so powerful to me. And we learned so much from our customers doing that. I like meeting store owners and kind of all that. So every single tasting I've done myself, actually.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow. Do you see value in like beer festivals? Because at a certain point, it just gets people just get wasted at these beer fests.
It's I think they used to be a big thing. They're starting to decline. What I found, it's harder to sell tickets. Like the pre-sale and all that stuff doesn't sell out anymore at the bigger beer festivals. There's less beer festivals as well happening. What I found is it's kind of the same crowd that goes from beer fest to beer fest. You're not attracting a lot of new people.
Yeah.
So what I find nice about tastings is you can get if I'm in a Whole Foods doing a tasting, I'll grab someone from the cereal aisle or something. Hey, you want to try some beer? Like you're getting kind of a new audience and creating more inclusion around it. So our strategy this summer is to do less beer festivals and more like community festivals, community events. Let's go get people that normally wouldn't be interested in craft beer. And
that makes so much sense. Despite the initial intuition to capture volume at a beer festival.
Yeah. And they used to be huge, right?
Yeah. I remember going to Soldier Field for one.
Yeah.
The Great American Beer Fest or something like that.
Yeah. It just, like anything else, it cycles. I feel like beer is going to make a comeback eventually. Like, it's been around for thousands of years. It'll come back. And so you just have to kind of
and you'll be prepared.
Ride through the waves. Yeah. You have to just kind of ride through the waves with that. That's okay.
So a couple of years ago, I think you were lined up for a tap room. Am I wrong?
Correct. We're, our goal is within the next year to open a space. Yeah.
Do you want to be in Chicago or would you not mind being in the suburbs? There's a lot of great breweries in the suburbs.
Yeah. We'd love to be in the city.
Okay.
I think it's important for us it's where a lot of our customers are. So we'd love to be there. Hard part is finding a space. So that's kind of our ongoing journey right now to figure out what's the right space.
Like a second gen kitchen type brewery space?
Exactly. Yeah. And, we've talked to chefs and other people about, what kind of food can we have? Because I think for the Indian community, food is so important. So we need to have good food pairings with the beers. We also want to do a lot of events. So how do we create a sense of community where people can host events and do things there? So we're actively looking. We're not in a rush. Like our thought is let's find a really great space rather than rush into the first space that we can find.
Who's filling the old Revolution space?
I don't know, actually. Yeah. That could be
I shot a wedding there.
No way.
And
okay.
Some of my favorite weddings are at breweries. I think when couples are looking for venues, breweries are a great alternative to the very expensive venues.
Yeah. The challenge with Indian weddings specifically is, you got to find some place that's got 400, 500. Yeah. So, maybe small, like baby shower or something would be fine. But yeah, small. We just went to a nice wedding this
maybe
past weekend.
On one of the days.
Yeah, maybe one day. Yeah.
That's great. So what are we current day now? What are we manifesting for 2025?
2025, I'd love two things. One is to just do a better, more intentional job of leaning into our community. And so more community building around the brewery. Okay. That could be through, how do we highlight Indian fashion designers in our merchandise? And, that is one aspect of it. It could be, do we have any kind of sub-brands that we launch to promote other Indian goods, right? Consumer goods and things like that. That could be another area. But two, the big one is the space. I want to really be in a space by the end of the year. And
is there a certain neighborhood you're manifesting?
I don't know, actually. I'm really open-minded. There's so much, my struggle is being indecisive about where to put it because there's so many great communities around Chicagoland. Like we've looked at Avondale, we've looked at Pilsen, we've looked in many different places. So we're
Monochrome just popped up.
Yeah. There's a bunch of breweries kind of coming up in different locations, and so we're open-minded.
If it was like really, really good, but like, I don't know, parking's huge for me for some reason.
Yes,
in the city, it's 100%. Like if it's gonna be like if I gotta just go around the block 20 minutes for a space, it's like at some point I'm like I'll just come back.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. I remember waiting like maybe a month and a half until going to Hot Butcher.
Yeah.
Just because how busy it was. I mean, good for them. It's just like it was, but like waiting like 30 minutes for a seat, it's like, come on.
For any sort of decision that a customer makes, it comes down to three things, right? It comes down to price, convenience, and the quality of what you're doing. And so, I think we're really good on quality. But for a tasting room, we want to make sure that it's beer that's not super expensive. Like, we want things to be accessible. It's actually the story behind our logo. This is representative of a group of people called the Mumbai Dabbawalas. You familiar with them? Or?
I heard you say it in the previous episode.
Yeah. So they're that's kind of like the everyman concept. We want beer to be accessible and open to the community. And I think then the convenience side of it, like, you've got to have parking. And so, like, that's certainly something I'm looking at as well. So,
okay. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot going on. And you're crushing it. I think you're still crushing it. I think you're reinvigorating my love for beer.
Yeah, we're excited. It's, there's an old saying that if you want to make a small fortune in craft brewing, you start with a large fortune, right? And so, you do it because it's a labor of love. We love beer. We love the art and science of beer. That's why we're in it. We're not in to make a quick buck or anything like that. So we'll be around for a long time, whether we're small or big, doesn't matter. But the goal is quality, to do things the right way, in an ethical way. And so we're super excited about that.
Yeah. What was that beer? There's a brewery on the north side that they're in such a hidden spot. But then Doug Valicki mentioned was in Ravenswood as well. I don't know. I think there is a renaissance coming back. It's like there was a lull for a little bit, and I hope it comes back.
I hope so too. Yeah, and it'll come back in a different form, right? I mean, before we met Jim Cook from Sam Adams.
Okay.
We were in this competition. Met him in New York City, and some of these early pioneers of craft beer. For so many years, you were getting kind of these European imports, and beer was not great. Then they kind of started the craft beer revolution with Boston Beer Co. and all these other places. And now, we're coming back to an era where people like macro brewers and kind of these big brand names.
Yeah.
And now we have to reinvent ourselves. I think that's the nature of capitalism and competition, right? Is that, you're going to go through these natural cycles, and every time you come out of a cycle, you'll come out stronger, better, differentiated, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
For business.
Oh yeah. I saw it. That's like, it's linked in the bio. You went with Funky Town.
Yeah. We went with Funky Town to Brewing the American Dream. They're great guys. They won the competition.
Oh wow.
And we're just so excited to kind of be a part of it and kind of get the mentorship from Sam Adams as part of that. Yeah.
And then Gator works for Sam Adams?
Now he works, after the competition, he works there. I don't think it was directly related. They have a big production facility in Cincinnati.
As a brewer, though?
He does some of their testing that they do in the lab. But yeah, they have a lot of different products, Twisted Tea.
I didn't know that.
And other things, that they make. So,
I might have known that. Okay, wow. Is there anything else that's on your mind or that you want to put out there?
No, I think this is great, and I appreciated the
perfect
chance to reflect.
Yeah, that was a lot. I didn't think we'd be talking about that much, actually, but I enjoyed it. That was you have quite the. It seems linear, actually, looking back, but not kind of non-linear path. But I can appreciate you. It's like I get the sense that you're all in everything you're doing, but you're able to straddle kind of multiple worlds.
I think I'd get too bored if I wasn't straddling multiple worlds.
Sure.
There's something to be said about intensity and focus on one thing.
Right.
I think that goes a long way. For me, like every time I've come up with an idea, it's been the intersection of multiple worlds coming together that have been really powerful. So
okay, if someone's not following you, where can people stay in touch?
Yeah, you can follow our brewery, Azadi Brewing, at Azadi Brewing on all social media. And if you want to follow me, at Azadi Bhavik, Bhavik.
Okay, Bhavik, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Till next time, see ya.
Yeah, see ya. Thank you.